The first thing Elias felt each dawn was silence. Not a heavy, oppressive silence, but the kind that precedes life, punctuated only by the rustling of coastal palms and the soft cries of seagulls. At 79, every joint ached a little, but routine was a balm. The scent of fresh coffee mingled with the sea salt, a perfume that had defined his mornings for over 5 decades. In that particular corner of the Florida coast, where the sand was soft and the cove's waters were a deep turquoise, Elias had built more than just a simple home, he had built a life. A life that, after Clara, his beloved wife, passed 8 years ago, had redefined itself around quietude and the ocean's unyielding rhythm. His boat, the Aurora, an old, sturdy fishing vessel, was almost an extension of himself. It wasn't a luxury, but a tool, a passage to the only place where memories didn't weigh so heavily, the vast, indifferent sea. He'd painted it white years ago, though he clearly remembered the vibrant blue it once was. Every plank, every screw, told a story, of plentiful catches, of unexpected storms, and of lazy afternoons under the scorching sun, with Clara by his side, laughing. Now, his only companions were the seagulls, who recognized him from afar, diving and squawking in anticipation of fish scraps, and the fish themselves, dancing like silver shadows around his hook. Elias didn't own a cell phone, he didn't have a computer, and he didn't watch TV. He'd chosen silence, and silence, in turn, had chosen him. That Tuesday morning, the sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of peach and gold. Elias was already in his small boat, the Aurora, a faithful companion of so many decades. He'd just checked the engine, an old but reliable Perkins that always started on the first try, and was tidying the bait box. The smell of fresh shrimp and worms filled the salty air. With a slow, precise movement, he cast his line, the fresh bait sinking into the clear water. His eyes, though slightly clouded by age, still held the keenness of a predator, fixed on the water's surface, reading the currents and subtle movements. He knew, instinctively, that the big fish were nearby. Indeed, moments later, he felt a firm tug. It was a snook, large, perhaps the biggest he'd seen in months, a true trophy for his table. Elias's heart gave a small leap of satisfaction, one of the few simple pleasures life still offered him. Then, the silence, his precious companion, was shattered. Not by a seagull or the wind, but by a megaphone. "Hands where we can see them, now," a masculine, authoritative voice echoed, artificially amplified. Elias looked up and saw, to his astonishment, a Coast Guard patrol boat. It approached with surprising speed, cutting through the waves with an aggressive bow. The small Aurora rocked violently in its wake, almost knocking Elias off balance. His fishing rods rattled, and the snook, which was about to be reeled in, unhooked itself and vanished into the depths. A small sigh of disappointment escaped Elias's lips, but he quickly suppressed it. Priorities. 3 agents, uniformed and armed, leapt onto the Aurora's deck with an agility that contrasted sharply with Elias's slow, deliberate movements. Agent Parker, the leader, was a young man, perhaps in his 30s, with a serious face and rigid posture, his hand hovering over the weapon on his hip. The other 2, even younger, seemed tense, their eyes sweeping the small boat with an almost aggressive suspicion. They trampled Elias's fishing gear, nets, buckets, and the bait box, as if they were insignificant obstacles. Elias, with the calm that only age and experience can bestow, slowly raised his calloused hands, palms open in a gesture of surrender and resignation. His expression was serene, his eyes fixed on the nervous officers. "Is there a problem, officers?" he asked softly, his voice hoarse from use and salt, but without any tremor. "You're being boarded on suspicion of trafficking illegal weapons," Parker replied, his voice harsh, utterly devoid of courtesy. "Search everything," he ordered his men, without even looking at Elias. The agents fanned out. One, the youngest, a young man with stubble and a nervous gaze, began tearing out the upholstered seats. Another, stockier, tossed nets aside, rummaging through baskets and buckets with a haste that bordered on brutality. Elias remained still, feeling their suspicious stares as they tore through every corner of his boat, invading his small sanctuary. Elias's dignity was unshakable, but the way they treated his few possessions bothered him. "Where are your papers, sir?" Parker demanded, his hand outstretched. Elias slowly pointed to a small compartment near the helm. That's where he kept the boat's documents and his wallet. One of the agents yanked it open abruptly, spilling papers and a laminated map of the area across the floor. Finally, he found a worn leather wallet, holding the Aurora's registration and Elias's fishing license. Agent Parker examined the documents with an almost palpable suspicion, his eyes scanning every line as if searching for a mistake, a flaw. Elias Costa, he read aloud, the name sounding foreign on his lips. He looked up at Elias. "What exactly are you doing out here, Mr. Costa?" The youngest agent, the one with the stubble, laughed loudly, a nervous, sarcastic laugh. "Fishing, sure. A boat like this is perfect for hiding contraband." He continued searching the compartments, knocking over the tackle box and scattering its hooks, weights, and artificial lures across the seats. He shoved the coffee thermos, which rolled and hit the side of the boat with a dull thud. Elias remained standing, watching his few precious belongings get tossed around. His favorite fishing rod, the one Clara had given him for his birthday, was thrown aside, falling onto the damp floor. Clara's photo, which sat on the dashboard in a simple frame, fell face down onto the soaked deck. A fleeting, almost imperceptible flicker of pain crossed Elias's face. That photo was his last physical link to her. "We received an anonymous tip," said Agent Parker, leaning close to Elias's face, his voice carrying a quiet accusation. "Precise intel, illegal weapons, exact coordinates, specific time. Strange coincidence you being right here, right now. Tell me the truth, Mr. Costa, were you hired to smuggle firearms?" Elias met Parker's eyes, his calm unyielding. "I already told you, officers. I was just fishing. I'm always out here." But Parker wasn't ready to let it go. "Keep searching, small arms could be hidden anywhere." The agents ramped up their search. They pulled up seats, checked under the console, inspected every inch of the boat. Elias watched in silence. His eyes showed no anger. There was no frustration. Only a deep, quiet patience, as if he'd seen worse, much, much worse. As if he knew the truth always finds its way out, sooner or later. "All clear, Chief." Agent Walters, the youngest, finally reported to Parker. Elias's calmness, however, felt suspicious in Parker's eyes. In his experience, innocent people usually got nervous during a search. They asked questions. They protested. They demanded explanations. Elias did none of that. This irritated and intrigued him at the same time. He couldn't have known that Elias had already been through real interrogations. The kind where enemy soldiers tried to extract information using methods no one in their right mind could imagine. The kind of experience that shapes a man in ways most people would never comprehend. There, gently swaying on the waters of the Florida coast, surrounded by agents who were humiliating him without even knowing who he was, this search felt like a simple, inconvenient misunderstanding. "Let's run his ID again," Parker said, grabbing the radio and calling the base. "Command, this is Patrol Delta. I need a full background check on Elias Costa, age 79. Confirm any prior records." Parker spoke Elias's information into the boat's radio, while the other two agents finished their fruitless inspection. A familiar, distant voice crackled back through the radio, "Copy that, Agent Parker. Running database check now." While they waited, Elias kept his gaze fixed on the sea, on the blue vastness, and on Clara's photo, which still lay face down on the boat's floor. The second stretched, filled only by the gentle rocking of the boat and the distant cry of seagulls. The tension in the air was almost palpable, though only the agents felt it. Elias remained calm. Then, the response came. The radio crackled again, and the voice of the base commander, deep and sharp, cut through the silence like a lightning bolt, without any filter or courtesy. "Agent Parker, step away from Mr. Costa immediately and apologize." Parker frowned, confused. "Command, say again?" "I didn't catch that." The commander's voice, now even harsher and with an unmistakable tone of urgency, boomed, "You have boarded Captain Elias Costa, a decorated veteran of the United States Navy, recipient of the Medal of Honor and the Cross of Valor for acts of bravery during combat operations off the coast of Vietnam and in the Gulf of Tonkin. He is a legend, Parker. Get off there now." The radio went silent for several long seconds. Parker looked at Elias. His expression, formerly harsh and suspicious, was now completely changed, replaced by stunned shock and a disbelief that bordered on panic. His eyes swept over the modest, aged figure before him, trying to reconcile the old fisherman with the image of a war hero. Furthermore, the commander's voice continued, softer now, but still firm, "We've just been informed that another team intercepted the correct vessel. Your GPS coordinates were off. The actual target was south of your position. The boat carrying illegal weapons has been seized and 3 suspects are in custody." Parker felt his stomach dropped. A simple coordinate error. They had boarded the wrong man. And not just any man. A war hero. The arrogance from just moments before dissolved into deep, overwhelming embarrassment. Guilt washed over him, mixed with profound mortification. He, a zealous young officer, had just humiliated an icon. "Mr. Costa," his voice now was respectful, almost a whisper, barely audible. We had no idea. I am truly sorry. So very sorry." Elias looked at him without a word. There was no anger in his eyes, nor the slightest need for revenge. Only a deep, undisturbed stillness that made the agents even more uneasy. It was as if he was looking through them, seeing something beyond the immediate situation. "Captain Costa," Parker corrected himself, his voice low, the tone now one of sincere, humble pleading. "My sincerest apologies. This was a grave misunderstanding. We were entirely mistaken." Elias finally spoke. His voice was soft, but carried an authority that went beyond any rank. "May I have my wallet back?" Parker handed him the documents with trembling hands, shame etched on his face. Then, he turned to his team. "Let's go. Put everything back the way it was. And fast." Within minutes, the agents scrambled to reverse the disorder they had caused. The seats were put back, the nets tidied, the tackle box reassembled. Clara's photo was carefully picked up by Parker and returned to Elias, who took it with an almost imperceptible nod. Once everything was in place, the agents jumped back onto their patrol boat, leaving Elias alone again. Elias, with the calm of someone who had lived too much to be rattled by small storms, methodically reorganized his fishing gear, as if nothing had happened. He checked his favorite rod, feeling the handle to make sure it wasn't cracked, the line intact. The humiliation and recognition had been merely passing waves, powerless to sink his spirit. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Elias started the engine, and the Aurora cut through the water calmly, heading towards the horizon. The sea wasn't right for fishing anymore that day. He had lost his snook, but perhaps he had gained something more, though he didn't yet know what. The next morning brought with it a clarity that the previous day hadn't offered. The air was fresher, the scent of salt more intense. Elias was at the dock, a small, simple white wooden pier near his home, preparing his boat for another day of fishing. The Aurora's engine had already been checked, the bait was ready, and the smell of coffee permeated the air. It was a routine that anchored him, a morning ritual he had chosen for himself decades ago, and which kept him connected to life. It was then that a car slowly approached along the dirt road leading to his property. It wasn't a fishing car. It was an official Coast Guard vehicle. Elias watched it stop at the dock, and saw Agent Parker step out, alone. He was in his uniform, but his posture was different. There wasn't the rigidity of authority, but a certain hesitation, almost a fragility. Parker walked towards Elias, who continued to inspect one of the boat's moorings, without lifting his head. "Captain Costa, may I have a word with you?" Parker's voice was different from the one Elias had heard the day before. There was no tone of command, but of respect. And there was a palpable vulnerability. Elias, without stopping his gear check, gave only a slight nod, a silent invitation for Parker to continue. That gesture, without words, was a test. An opening. Parker swallowed hard. What happened yesterday, it was inexcusable. I deeply regret it, Captain. There's no excuse for the way we treated you. He paused, searching for the right words. You know, my grandfather, he also served in Vietnam. A distant memory brought a faint smile to Parker's eyes, a glimpse of something more personal and human. His name was Elroy Smith. Corporal in the 3rd Engineer Battalion. A short, stubborn guy, always with a cigarette tucked behind his ear. I grew up on his stories, Captain. He made me promise, even when I was a kid, that if I ever served, I'd do it with honor and respect. Parker's voice wavered slightly. Yesterday, when I boarded your boat and treated you that way, if he were alive, he wouldn't have been proud of me. I think I forgot what really matters. I forgot what the uniform truly represents. Elias, who had stopped coiling the ropes, finally looked up at Parker. His blue eyes, deep as the sea, fixed on Parker's. There was an ancient wisdom there, an understanding that transcended the immediate situation. It was a mistake. Mistakes happen. He paused, his gaze drifting for a moment to the horizon, as if weighing his words. What matters is what we do after them. The simplicity and profundity of Elias's reply hit Parker like a punch to the gut. Those few words disarmed any defense he might still have. Elias's weight had completely disoriented him, Elias's quietude exposed his own turmoil. He felt the deep truth in those words, the silent grace of a man who could transform humiliation into a lesson for another. It was a kind of strength he had never encountered in his military training or in his Coast Guard experiences. I don't know many people like you, Captain Costa, Parker confessed, his voice choked. How can you forgive so easily? I still feel so much shame for what I did. Elias turned to finish preparing the boat, but his voice carried the depth of an ocean of experiences. Anger is a heavy burden, Agent Parker, he said, his voice husky, almost a whisper. I've carried too much weight in my life. Too much loss, too much pain, too much darkness. There's no room for more. Now, I choose to carry only what's necessary. What makes me light? What allows me to continue? Those words resonated with Parker. The idea of carrying only what's necessary struck him with an unexpected force. He realized that, in his eagerness for efficiency and to prove his worth, he had carried the weight of arrogance, distrust, and judgment, weights that Elias, a man who had lived longer and suffered more, had consciously shed. Elias finished prepping the boat. Parker, without thinking, stepped forward to help push it into the water. It was an instinctive movement, one of respect and a desire to serve. Elias accepted the help with a nod, and together, they pushed the Aurora into the water. The boat floated gently. Mind if I come along today? Parker asked, his gaze hopeful. Elias turned, a small, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. Hop in, he replied. I've got an old rod to spare. My wife used this one. Elias picked up a well-maintained bamboo fishing rod that was leaning against the side of the boat. Just remember, Elias added, a playful glint in his eyes, you owe me a snook. Parker smiled, a genuine smile that hadn't come easily since the incident. "I'll do my best, Captain." He jumped into the boat, a little clumsily, but with a new energy. The Aurora's Perkins engine hummed softly, a familiar, comforting sound to Elias. The boat cut through the turquoise water, heading towards their usual spot, where the sea was the right color to calm Elias's soul, where, for a few hours, he could forget the weight of memories, and where the fish never failed to appear. Parker watched Elias handle the vessel, precise, efficient movements, a deep understanding of the currents and winds. There was no wasted effort, just the mastery of years of practice. It was a silent dance between the man and the sea. "How many years fishing here, Captain?" Parker asked, as Elias dropped the anchor with a soft thud. 22, Elias replied, handing him the bamboo rod. Parker took it with reverence, feeling the smooth texture of the wood. "She was very good at this," Elias added, his voice soft, Clara's memory hovering like a gentle breeze. Elias showed Parker how to prepare the line, with a care that was almost reverent. How to tie the hook with a firm knot, how to choose the right bait. "You have to feel the bait, Parker. It has to be an extension of your finger. The fish senses your calm, or your haste." They cast their lines at the same time, silence settling again, but now it was a shared, comfortable silence. A little over an hour passed. The sun was rising higher, warming the air. Suddenly, Parker's line tugged with unexpected vigor. He, with the excitement of a novice, pulled hard. "Easy, Parker," Elias instructed, his voice calm but firm. "Let it fight a bit. Don't pull its anger. Let it expend energy. Then, pull slowly, firmly, but without haste." Parker followed the advice. The fish came up with a little less effort. It was a small, glistening fish, but not the big snook he owed Elias. "Let it go," Elias suggested, his voice gentle. Parker frowned, confused. "Why, Captain?" "It's too small." "But I caught it." "Yes, you caught it," Elias said, a glint in his eyes. "But it needs to grow. Let it go." Parker hesitated for a moment, then carefully removed the hook and released the fish. He watched it disappear into the clear water. "That fish is just like us, Parker," Elias observed, his voice full of undeniable wisdom. "We all need to grow a bit more. Learn what to let go of and what to carry." They continued fishing and talking. Elias spoke about the tides, about reading the weather signs at sea, about the patience that fishing teaches. Parker, in turn, shared stories from his life, his challenges in the Coast Guard, his aspirations. There was no longer the hierarchy of the previous day, just two men, in a boat, under the vast sky, exchanging life lessons. They didn't catch many fish that day, but both men knew they weren't out there just for the fish. What Parker learned that day, the sea held, the sea that holds all secrets.